mouth of the South, Jimmy Hart. Hey, check out my new tag team, baby, Monty and the Pharaoh.
Hey, Jimmy, don't forget to tell them about Long Island's #1 pro wrestling broadcast.
Well, you know what, I would, but you already did it.
It's Monty and the Pharaoh.
With Monty and Pharaoh. The Monty and Pharaoh Show.
Monty and Pharaoh, bro.
Monty and the Pharaoh.
Monty and the Pharaoh. The Monty and the Pharaoh.
The Monty and Pharaoh Show.
And you're watching the Monty and Pharaoh Show.
Monty and the Pharaoh.
With Monty and the Pharaoh.
Monty and the Pharaoh.
It's Monty and the Pharaoh.
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 Monty and Pharaoh.
Monty and the Pharaoh.
And Monty and the Pharaoh. Oh, is it Monty and the Pharaoh?
Monty and Pharaoh.
The Monty and the Pharaoh Show.
Monty and the Pharaoh.
To the Monty and the Pharaoh Show. And it's Monty and the Pharaoh, baby.
Watching Monty and the Pharaoh.
With Monty and the Pharaoh. Monty and the Pharaoh. Oh, what a run.
Monty and the Pharaoh.
Monty and the Pharaoh.
Hey, cut music. When you want the best in professional wrestling, Long Island, there's only one place you're going to get it, right here.
Monty and the Pharaoh. Now, that's not just the coolest, and that's not just the best. That, my friends, is just incredible. Monty and the Pharaoh.
You've got the future Hall of Famer, that rocker, Marty Jannetty, and MJ in the house, and I'm sitting here with two more future Hall of Famers, Monty and the Pharaoh. We're doing that stuff, and we gonna rock it.
Monty and the Pharaoh.
Monty and the Pharaoh. Duh.
I want to know why we're not good friends like they are.
What are you talking
Like, I'm
about?
a little jealous. They're like all nice. to
They're
each
not
other.
kissing or anything. What are you talking
that's
about?
a
We did before we got on
Yeah,
camp.
you know,
He slipped me the
straight shot.
tongue. I can't stand that. His breath is so bad.
Oh, my God.
When you were in WCW
Yeah.
and you were booking, did you guys want to put the WWE out? Did you want to knock them out?
I never did. I never did because I'm the person that thinks I used to give guys jobs even if I had to cut their money because some people didn't understand how good the guys were. I would keep them working enough that they could feed their families. I never wanted to see the WWF at the time go because those guys, hey, they were on the road 350 days like we were. They deserve to feed their families. Competition is good for the wrestling business. That's when we were at our highest. And it makes you think, okay, I'm against my competitor this week. He must be thinking something very, very good for this week. That's why I used to book a year out. And I could adjust after 3 months where I was going.
Do you think you were one of the best top 3 bookers in the history of professional wrestling?
No. I was just the last to learn, I think. Along with
You were highly successful. Your angles were pretty successful.
Yeah, and one of the things is I broke Paulie into the business, and Paulie became very successful. I think what's happened is I got to learn under the guys that learned, like Eddie learned from Doc Sapolis, who learned from Ed Strangle Lewis, who learned from Lou Thez. It was passed down. But that lineage has been broken. And, I call Terry Funk almost every week, and Terry and I talk about it. And we talk about manipulation. And Terry says, people think manipulation is a bad word. Manipulation is a good word because you manipulate to draw people to come to the buildings. Well, when you say manipulation to this young group, they say, oh, they're carnies, they're trying to work us. No, we're trying to work the audience.
Yeah.
And that was very nice for you to say, but I was like, I would not have been even mentioned like that if I wasn't accepted by the people I was.
You were NWA junior heavyweight champion a few times, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
so I got to bring this up because you earlier on you mentioned the difference in size and believability when there's a big guy and a smaller guy in the ring. Is Rey Mysterio the beginning of the small guy pitting the big guy and really pushing that line of believability? Because nowadays you see so many wrestlers wrestle like Rey Mysterio, flipping and flying and flying and flipping, and then they pin a guy his size.
Or bigger.
Or bigger. Is Rey the beginning of that? I mean, I don't want to pin it on Rey because he's a legend.
I don't want to cut Kevin off, but in my eyes, from my generation, I thought when that WrestleMania, I don't know if it was WrestleMania 30, when Daniel Bryan subsequently beat Triple H. Mm-hmm. He beat who else? Mm-hmm. Who else did he beat?
Batista, I think, was in that
Batista
match.
and somebody else.
The fans had demanded that. They almost pushed the McMahons into booking that.
He beat three of the biggest guys in the business all in one night. I could not fathom that. He's probably one of the greatest technical workers out there right now. He's phenomenal. Trained by Shawn Michaels, I believe. Tremendous athlete, a great guy. I like him a lot. I appreciate his work, but the psychology, whoever booked that, I couldn't understand it.
I hate to say this, you're absolutely right. I booked that. I booked Rey. But I was thinking he was going to be the only one because my thought was he was David against Goliath. He got the push because he was David against Goliath. Mm-hmm. I didn't expect that.
A floodgate?
Yeah, the floodgate to open.
So I just put you over as the greatest booker of all time.
Yeah,
My partner just called you book.
But he's probably right because that was the beginning of disbelief where you checked at the door.
Can I take a
You
little?
created Orange Cassidy.
Hold on.
No.
Can I take? Wait a minute.
Good.
Let me take a little heat off of him. You didn't book. You didn't book when 1, 2, 3 Kid pinned.
No.
Okay,
no.
it's not all your fault.
No,
that was
no, but here's the
Those
difference.
smaller guys.
Here's the difference. Rey Mysterio was so unique at the
He
time.
was.
It was.
And he does
At
play
the
big.
time, he was the only guy
Does.
doing the flips. He was the only guy
It was
doing.
like Spider-Man versus the Hulk.
It was the
And he
only,
plays big, right?
Yeah,
Right?
and he plays big.
He does.
And it was the only time that they had seen that kind of guy since Argentina Rocca.
Right,
So I thought, well, he's the only guy. We're not going to open this up. And then then I left, and it opened up, and it opened up, and opened up, and opened up.
Created Orange Cassidy.
Billy Kidman pinning Hulk Hogan.
I did.
So
I can't.
if you pay for wrestling school and you wrestle, does that make you a pro wrestler? What makes a pro wrestler?
That's a hard question these days because you're going to get a lot of people bent out of shape.
Yeah, well, that's why I'm asking.
I think you have to pay your dues. You gotta really. It's tough. I mean, everybody.
I'll answer it.
Go ahead, Kevin will answer.
He's trying to be around. I'm trying to be around.
There you go, Kev.
Politically correct. I'm old enough not to be politically correct, and if they hate me, they hate me.
There you go.
The guys teaching them never drew a dime. Okay, as Mike Graham said, never drew a dime, never drew a dime, never drew a dime.
Never drew a dime.
Here, give me a pencil.
And Mike was right. You can't have guys telling people how to work to get asses and seats when you never drew a dime.
So what is a pro wrestler?
To me, a pro, when they say, oh, he's a great technician, he's a great wrestler. A great wrestler to me is the guy that put in between 16 inches around the arena. If you don't put people to come and see you, you're not a great
So
wrestler.
if you're on an indie show and they pay you $20, you're not officially a pro wrestler.
No, I don't think
no.
so. I don't think so. I think you should try to look for a...
It's like
And I'm not knocking anybody because there's some guys that started off that way. But the guy that's running the show it's his responsibility to look at somebody and say, can this guy draw me more than I'm paying him?
Amen.
Who is the greatest draw in the history of this business, in your opinion?
In this business?
Yeah.
Undertaker, I think.
Undertaker by far.
Undertaker by
yeah,
far.
Definitely.
By far. How long's he been in the business?
Interesting. Okay.
How long has he been in the business?
About 30 plus years.
Every time he
Non-stop.
works, he sells out.
Yeah.
And he never broke character. That's why they paid to see him. He didn't break character until this year. He didn't have a social media thing. You know, no one knew where he lived. There wasn't anything about him. He was the Undertaker 24 hours
And that's all
a day.
you know. You knew his real name, but that's all you know.
So I ask you this then: you're running, you're with Bischoff, you're booking for Bischoff. How come you guys didn't try to rip Shawn Michaels and the Undertaker away? You could have put the dagger.
Ooh.
You could have finished it.
Yeah, that would have been.
The Undertaker, and I don't know Mark very well.
Okay.
But the Undertaker, I believe, is a very loyal guy. His son is named after Vince. Shawn Michaels knew that if he left, he wouldn't get the money in the long run with Vince by showing his loyalty. They weren't going anyplace, and it always gave their friends a chance to say, well, we'll just go back up there. It was a very smart move, and it was very Machiavellian. I thought they were brilliant guys that did it that way.
Were you upset the night that kayfabe apparently took a death at Madison Square Garden?
Yes, I was.
With the curtain call?
Yes, I was, and I think that the guys did it for maybe the right reason because they loved each other, but they certainly did it for the wrong reason for the fans that paid. It hurt their business, I believe. And Razor and Kevin are very good friends of mine. Very good friends.
There's another comment out there. They just want to say, Kevin, you're a genius and an icon in this industry.
Oh, thank you very much, Mom. I appreciate it.
One of our first guests was Jim Dowse, the original husband of your ex, Nancy. Can you tell us about the day that you heard that Nancy was murdered?
Yeah, I built the largest gym, and it's still the largest gym at the Florida Keys. And Teddy Long called me. And it was one of the saddest days of my life. We had spent 13 years together, and it's like 1 out of 2 marriages fall apart. Our marriage fell apart. We were separated for 8 months. She was a wonderful girl, and the most important thing to her was being a mother. And to this day, her mother and family I still talk to. There's an urn of a starfish with Nancy and an urn of her son, her grandson, on her mantle. And I can't imagine her mother and father getting up every morning without them.
Mr. Kevin Sullivan is behind the arrangements for Cuba. What do we got going on in Cuba, Kev?
Hopefully not another revolution. But, but you can't tell with Andrew and a few Cuban Libras, and I may be president. So you guys better take care of me right now.
He might say the wrong thing at a bar the next thing
Yeah.
Oh, my
But
God.
we're hoping to bring pro wrestling back to Cuba, which hasn't had it since 1959.
Wow.
So that's when Fidel took over. And Andrew has done an amazing job. The thing about Andrew is you can't judge a book by its cover. I think of myself as a semi-historian, and when I talk about things I think are over people's heads, Andrew beats me to it. And Andrew has gone and done this. We were going to go before the COVID hit.
April 18th?
and it hit. But as soon as we're able to travel, because the Caribbean has locked us down except for, I believe, St. Kitts and St. Croix.
And Jamaica.
And no,
Jamaica's locked down?
And the other one is Aruba. So hopefully we'll be able to go, and it will. I'm looking for it to be a big thing, because the people there all have satellite dishes. They've seen wrestling. They've never seen it since 1957, and I'm hoping that we will do really, really well and make it like 4 times a year. It would be great.
I want to know why we're not good friends like they are.
What are you talking
Like,
about?
I'm a little jealous. They're like all nice. to
They're
each
not
other.
kissing or anything. What are you talking
that's
about?
like-
We did before
strange.
he slipped me the
Strange.
tongue. I can't stand that. His breath is so bad.
Oh my God! What was the history of pro wrestling in Cuba before Fidel?
Before Fidel,
He's a historian.
before Fidel, it was at one time ran by Cowboy Luttrell, who was the precursor of the Eddie Graham.
Okay.
And then after him, a local promoter took over and gave Cowboy Luttrell a booking fee. And he took wrestlers from the Caribbean, and mostly, Hispanic wrestlers. So it was back in the day. I remember, people don't know this, but Florida Championship Wrestling ran Puerto Rico before Carlos Colon. And
nice.
Jim Barnett actually gave Carlos Puerto Rico.
How did Barnett lose all of his power? It sounds to me like he had his fingers everywhere. What was that? What caused Barnett's demise?
He lost his power because even though he was an NWA member, occasionally he would run against an NWA member. And it caused a lot of heat and caused the division. And they decided it'd be better off if Jim left. And Jim sold Detroit to the Sheik and Indianapolis to the Bruiser and went to Australia. And back then, the only thing on Australian TV was government things, sharing sheep,
Sharing sheep.
Yeah, sharing sheep.
And rugby, right?
And rugby and cricket, and then all of a sudden wrestling came and they blew it open. Back in 1972, I was offered, and I was green as grass. I was in Florida, and I was offered $1,000 a week as an opening match.
In 1972.
1972.
For Australia.
2 questions here now that you're mentioning that. Number one, when you came up with that whole satanic,
Yeah.
weren't you nervous about that? Like you were really stepping over the line?
I never said the word devil.
Right.
I never said, hell. I never said that. And I used to go to church and talk to my priest about it, and he said, in the end, Jesus wins anyway. So, and he was a big wrestling fan. He says, Dusty's Jesus, and he's going to beat you anyway.
Yeah, that's cool.
Alice Cooper's father was a
He
minister.
referred to the devil as the chairman of the board.
Yeah, and I also used to call Habuda Dean. And Habuda Dean, when I went to Malaysia, I went to the cave temples in Malaysia 2,500 years before Christ. And I got to meet a guy that was, they called him the Sifu, which is like the one that was the enlightened one. And he told me that the word Habuddin was a fertility god in their religion. So I could guess I got screwed so many times by Dusty. I was Habuddin.
So everybody says it, but I don't know how true it is but was New York the Mecca? Like, did everybody want to get to New York? Because really, you never went to New York, right? You worked there, but you never really, when you were in your heyday, you never headed that way.
No, I never headed that way because At that time, I had a good job in Japan, and I also had a good job in Asia. And I knew these guys were working 350 days a year, and I knew I wasn't going to fit in that clique. So I said, okay, I may not make quite as much money, but I'll be home. I'll be places that I short trips. My main hobby is scuba diving, and I scuba dived around the world. So I've lived a good life. I've never said, oh, I wish I went. You can't look back, as I said before.
Does Vince McMahon owe wrestlers past pensions and medical? Is it his responsibility to take care of the old timers that can't pay for themselves?
When I signed a piece of paper that said they had the rights to buy television, there was no internet, there was no streaming service. I knew what I was getting into, professional wrestling, but the YouTube, the network, I should be getting a shekel somewhere down the line, enough to pay for a sushi dinner once in a while.
But back in the day, you were able to leave and
Right.
go from area to area. You
Right.
wanted to be an independent, right?
Right.
Because if you wore out, you could make more money somewhere else, right?
Right.
So I guess that model just traveled along all this time. And then my question to you then, as being a leader of wrestlers, how come you didn't get the boys to unionize?
None of the boys would unionize. To this day, they would unionize.
Why?
Because some guys are making $6 million, some guys are making $300,000 or $150,000. Are you going to get the guy that was making? I mean, Jesse tried to do it with Hulk, right? And Hulk exposed him. You think a guy making $6 million is going to go along?
No.
No, they're not going to do it.
We're here at the mecca of talk shows,
That's
the
it,
Monty
baby.
and the Pharaoh show.
You hear that, Matt? Do you hear that?
This is the mecca of talk shows.
And I'm having a psychic moment here too. Oh wait. Oh,
Better-
if you have us in your corner, you'll definitely win that belt against.
Greater than Carson, better than Letterman. Move over, Leno. We got Monty and the Pharaoh. Double or nothing right there at that table.
In my opinion, you're probably in the top 3 bookers in the history of this business,
Oh.
and I put you ahead of Dusty Rhodes, right? So,
nice.
and I mean that from my
Nice.
heart.
Thank you.
I you know,
Nice.
again, I know you're probably friends with Bischoff. I don't know him, but I will tell you that it must have been difficult working with him. So,
We have become better friends after 20 years, and I understand what Eric went through. And after you look back at things, you can see how things happened for a guy that was thrown in that position at a very young age, and he was thrown. It was a guppy thrown into the shock pool.
Yeah.
Did pretty damn good there
and he
for a
did-
while
he did
too.
all right. But again,
Yeah.
I will say
Not
this
bad.
again. He had you.
I got to tell you a quick story. One of my dearest of people that I had in my camp was Luna Vachon. And this was before she was Luna Vachon. And this is how heavy we got into mental things. And Gordon was the perfect person to play the part, okay? So Luna was going to give the Wrestler of the Year to Florida. It was down to Barry Windham or myself. Well, her name was Trudy at the time. And I said to her on the way out, I said, I'm going to have to slap you because you're going to give it to Barry. So, same thing. It was very, very close, but Barry Windham won in the closest thing. She handed him the thing. Barry walked off. I turned to her and I slapped her. When I slapped her, her legs went in the air, right? I walk off. I get back to the dressing room. Everybody's pissed at me, right? And she walks in and says, hey, you pussy, can't you slap any harder than that? I'm a Vachon. Okay, so now I'm suspended for TV for 2 weeks because I will not apologize to her. On the 3rd week, I'm going to make an apology, and Gordon's there. The President of the United States is going to make me apologize. And he said, we're here at a very somber moment. Mr. Sullivan's here to
You're an
apologized to Trudy, and she said, "Mr. Sully, before you say anything, I'd like to address Mr. Sullivan." And Gordon says, "You have every right to. Please go ahead." And she said, "When you touched me, I had this warm feeling over my body that I had never had before. I had a tingling sensation that I never felt before. Will you allow me to follow you?" And I said, and she was beautiful.
Right.
I said, "Well, you have to shave half your head." She said, "I'll do anything for you." Gordon's face
Oh
dropped.
my God.
Everybody saw her get her head shaved and said, "This has to be real." No, we'd do that. And Luna was terrific, and I miss her to this day.
How about Purple Haze?
Purple Haze is 83 years old. He's squatting 405 for 10 reps.
Yep, Mark Lewin.
And he's doing, and I hate to say what his supplements are, but his supplements are A to Z. And that isn't vitamin A and zinc.
It's a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
He dabbles still.
Yeah.
He partakes of the cosmic cookie.
I want to thank Andrew Anderson, Kevin Sullivan. What an honor.
Thank you guys. I appreciate it.
Incredible. This has been Mike Monty.
This has been the Pharaoh. Until next time, later.